Good evening. I want to thank the parishioners here at St. John of the Cross in Western Springs for inviting me to make a presentation on the environment, something that is important to me and should be important to everybody. So let me begin with my presentation. And let's start at the beginning of uh, the origin of the earth. It is said to be 4.5 billion years old. Uh, and obviously, we've only been here a tiny, tiny amount of that. But what happened at the beginning? Well, it eventually consisted of trees, flowers, vegetables, birds, animals, fish, soil, water. And then what happened? Well, the trees produced blossoms to bear fruits, and the blossoms fell to the ground and enriched the soil. The birds would eat the fruit, and the seeds would fall to the ground, and those seeds would produce more trees. The animals would eat the plants, and they might eat some of the smaller animals. And then when the animals die, they become food for another animal or fertilize the soil. Nature was designed by God to sustain itself and produce no waste. Basically, it's what today we call the circular economy, where something is produced and when it's no longer needed, it is used for something else. But then humans came on the earth. Humanity arrived, and everything was fine until the past century or two. As the human population grew, everything was uh, pretty reasonable for many years, no detrimental effects. But uh, the decline in the environment started to accelerate in 1950. And what has happened since then? Well, one issue is global warming, now called climate change. Back in 1988, James Hansen testified before Congress and said that the atmosphere for centuries has had a carbon dioxide concentration of 280 parts per million, but it's starting to increase. And if we get over 350, we're going to be in big trouble. Well, we're around 420 right now. Then there's the overconsumption of our natural resources. There's an organization called the Global Footprint Network that measures the natural resources. What do I mean by that? It's the forests, agriculture, food, fish, animals, something that generates every year. And for every country on the earth, this Global Footprint Network measures how much every country generates and how much every country consumes. Uh, and uh, it's getting worse and worse. There's also a decrease in the quality and quantity of fresh water. Um, there are about 4 billion people with water scarcity that results in about 1 million people per year that die. By 2030, the demand for water is going to exceed the supply by 40%. And this was all determined earlier this year. The first meeting of a global water conference, first time in 46 years, because they're really concerned. These people feel that all humans have the right to safe drinking water, and we're trying to do something about it. And then we have the continued acceleration and population growth. So what is needed from countries? They must take the lead. But the question, are they really? Uh, the thing that countries, in terms of climate change, as an example, there's a climate change performance index, and that tells the story. There's an organization in Bonn, Germany called Greenwatch that uses 4 metrics to determine how well a country is doing. They look at the amount of uh, emissions that are emitted, carbon emissions from the country, how much renewable energy is being produced, how much energy is consumed, and what is their policy of reducing emissions. And based on these metrics, they've shown that of the 60 countries that they look at, the US and China are ranked number 52 and number 51. The Global Footprint Network, as I mentioned, they measure how much every country is consuming and generating. And this organization says that we are currently consuming the equivalent of 1.7 Earths. And they have a metric called Earth Overshoot Day. That is the day in the year that we will have consumed all the natural resources that will be generated in that calendar year. So basically what's going to be generated in 2023, we will consume that by August 2nd. And unfortunately, it seems like every year it's getting earlier and earlier. We have water shortages worldwide. And I'm sure you read about them, what's happening out west, California, Arizona, Nevada. In fact, just recently they said in Phoenix, they're going to stop home construction unless the builder can prove that there's sufficient groundwater to supply the future for that home. So it's, and population just hit 8 billion people. If you stop to think about this, population at the time of Jesus Christ was about 160 million. It took almost 1,800 years to hit 1 billion. And then another 60, 70 years to hit 2 billion. You know, we've been on this earth an infinitesimal, small period of time, considering when humans first arrived on this earth. And as an example, just in my lifetime, which is really minimal, we have added close to 6 billion people. And we're adding 10 million people every 6 to 7 weeks. So we have to think about these things. So what can corporations do? Well, they could embed sustainability in their operations and become ESG. Let me give you a little background there. Back in around 1988, a group got together to talk about how the developing countries can survive with so much of the natural resources, basically with the earth deteriorating. And they came up with something called sustainable development, which today is called sustainability. And it has 3 components: environmental integrity, social equity, and economic viability. And if you have all 3 of those, you can become a sustainable entity. Today, that's called ESG. And ESG stands for environmental social governance. It has 2 of the 3 legs of what's called the triple bottom line. And governance is how you organize your organization in order to provide for and the environment and social, and the profits, economic benefit will come. And it's unfortunately, there are too many companies that still follow Milton Friedman, who says the company's primary objective is to meet shareholders' need of maximizing profits. Milton Friedman, the former professor at the University of Chicago, and was kind of the dean of economy. But what has happened today is because ESG companies are so much more efficient, profitable, and so on, there are even company bond funds or mutual funds specializing just on ESG companies because they are so much more profitable. But what has happened is those companies that don't follow ESG are saying, gee, all we have to do is tell the people we're ESG and then they'll invest in our company. And what has happened? That has led to greenwashing. So if you see an ESG company, just be careful. It may not really be ESG. So what can we do? Well, we should follow the lead of our religious leaders. In the Eastern Orthodox Church, specifically the Greek Orthodox Church, were led by Patriarch Bartholomew, who's in Constantinople, and the Roman Catholic Church, led by Pope Francis. So let me give you some background. What's the Eastern Orthodox concern for the environment? Well, in 1989, Patriarch Demetrius at the time said that we have to have an annual day of prayer for the care of creation. And that annual day of prayer is September 1. That has been followed very diligently by Patriarch Bartholomew, who took over in 1991. And he was at a conference in Santa Barbara, California, when he said in 1997 that harm to the environment is a sin. So he really takes it very seriously. And what he has done, he's hosted 9 international environmental symposia, beginning in 1995 on the Aegean and Mediterranean Sea. Then he went to the Black Sea, the Danube River, the Adriatic Sea, the Baltic, to South America for the Amazon River, went all the way up to the Arctic Ocean. He had one of these symposia scheduled for the Niles River, but had to be canceled and moved it to the Mississippi River. And the most recent one was just 8 years ago. Is it 8 years ago? In the Saronic Islands. Or that might have been in 2020. Anyway, but in addition to these symposia, he has also had conversations. Basically, they're environmental conferences, but much smaller. The ones on the seas usually had 150, 200 participants. These in Halki were primarily 40 to 50 people, something like that. And the first one was in 2012 on the environment, ethics, and innovation. And I had the honor of being invited to it. And since I'm going to Turkey, Halki, by the way, is an island in the Sea of Marmara. And since I was going there the first time, I went to a travel agency in downtown Chicago focusing on Turkey. And so I went there to see what else I should see while I'm in Turkey. And I told him that I'm attending this conference on the island of Halki. And he said, Halki, never heard of it. So he pulled out a map and I showed him the island. He said, oh, you mean Heybeliada, which is the Turkish name. I was using the Greek name. Um, anyway, Patriarch Bartholomew had another summit 3 years later on environment, literature, and the arts. 2019 education and the environment. This was really focused on seminarians and theologians to embed the environment in their studies. Halki Summit 4 was 2021, basically to deal with the pandemic. And the most recent one was just last year, sustaining the future of the planet together. And guess who attended that one? Right? Pope Francis and Patriarch Bartholomew were together in Turkey, June 8th through 11th last year. So we're talking about the communion of two Christian religions for the care of creation. How did we come together? Well, in 1965, Pope Paul VI and Patriarch Athenagoras met, and it was the first time in 500 years that the Pope and the Patriarch got together. And this was basically the lifting of the anathemas. What is that? It's basically eliminating the curse of the excommunication, which took place in 1054 when the two churches split. And in March of 2013, when Pope Francis was inaugurated as the Pope, Patriarch Bartholomew was there, and he read the gospel at this inauguration. And he was the first patriarch to ever attend such an event. In May of 2014, there was a joint declaration between the two churches to promote full unity of all Christians, but above all, unity between the Roman Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox Church. And this can be read when you get these slides. If you get a copy of these slides and you click on this link, Pope and Patriarch and Joint Declaration, you can read the whole thing. But here they are when they signed the declaration. And it covers a lot of issues, but the one that I want to focus on is number 6, which says, "It is our profound conviction that the future of the human family depends also on how we safeguard, both prudently and compassionately, with justice and fairness, the gift of creation that our Creator has entrusted to us. Therefore, we acknowledge in repentance the wrongful mistreatment of our planet, which is tantamount to sin before the eyes of God. We reaffirm our responsibility and obligation to foster a sense of humility and moderation, so that all may feel the need to respect creation and to safeguard it with care. Together, we pledge our commitment to raising awareness about the stewardship of creation. We appeal to all people of goodwill to consider ways of living less wastefully and more frugally, manifesting less greed and more generosity for the protection of God's world and the benefit of his people." And then later in the year, November 30th of 2014, was a second joint declaration focusing basically strictly on the environment and the preparation of the encyclical. And here they are, Pope Francis and Patriarch Bartholomew in Constantinople. And that is when the Patriarch really convinced the Pope that needs to take the environment more seriously and embed it in his agenda. And this resulted in the preparation of the encyclical Laudato Si. So in June of the following year, the encyclical by Pope Francis was presented, but alongside of him was Metropolitan John Zizulis of Pergamon. He's a metropolitan in Turkey who passed away earlier this year at the age of around 90, and along with Cardinal Peter Turkson. They were there with the Pope when he presented Laudato Si. Later in the year, August 6th, Pope Francis also sets September 1 as the World Day of Prayer for the Care of Creation, following the Eastern Orthodox tradition. So how do we celebrate that? Well, in August of 2015, 8 years ago, Saints Peter and Paul Greek Orthodox Church in Glenview celebrated the environmental vespers for the care of creation. Although the annual day is September 1, to have a service in the morning may not be attended that well because people are working. So we have it the evening before, since the ecclesiastical day actually starts at 6 o'clock the night before. So we have the Vespers on August 31st at Saints Peter and Paul. The following year, we had another service, but this time we did it in conjunction with Our Lady of Perpetual Help Roman Catholic Church, also of Glenview. The year after that, the service was held at OLPH. And basically, we've been alternating the venue every year. So this year we will have the 9th annual Environmental Vespers. And it'll be held obviously August 31st, 2023, with a speaker. Each of these services, after the service, there's a reception followed by a speaker. And this year, the speaker is Sarah Elizabeth Ippel, who's the founder of the Academy of Global Citizenship. It's an organization, basically it's a school on the southwest side of Chicago, around Cicero and Archer Avenue, a little bit east of Cicero. And it's to empower all students to positively impact the community and the world beyond. She's created this AGC as a model for educating future generations. In September, basically right at the time that she's speaking, she will be opening a new 3-acre campus that'll be with net zero energy consumption. If you can attend, you really need to. The service is outstanding and the speaker will be great. But in order to take care of our environment, we must believe in science. And Pope Francis gave a message to the Pontifical Academy of Science just 3 years ago when he said, where he urges science and technology to create an inclusive society. The following year, Patriarch Bartholomew, in his Christmas message, said science is a priceless gift of God. So this is something that we truly must follow. And let me give you an idea of what God is telling us. In 2020, which is the year of the pandemic, God sent us a message. What was that message? Well, basically, it was COVID-19 caused many detrimental impacts. People got sick, people died, um, businesses were shut down, schools were shut down. It really caused many, many problems. But there are some positives. It improved the four major environmental issues I talked about earlier. Carbon emissions were way down because people weren't traveling. The energy consumption was lower, so power plants weren't emitting. Um, People in India could see the top of a mountain for the first time in 30 years because the atmosphere was so clear. Anyway, carbon emissions went way down. Uh, Earth Overshoot Day, uh, which is related to consumption natural resources. Earth Overshoot Day was a month later, so we weren't consuming as much. Water consumption was way down, primarily industrial usage was way down, and population growth slowed down because there was less dating, and even families, young families, young couples were thinking twice about raising children in this environment. So God sent us this message saying, you can still have a good life without destroying the environment that I created for you. So what are some things that we can all do? Well, at our church, you can create a care for creation ministry. And I know in the many Roman Catholic churches have already done this. I'm hoping that the Eastern Orthodox churches are doing the same thing. Something that you can do is install solar energy at your church. We did that. Actually, we're doing it at Saints Peter and Paul. And the real benefit here is that it can be done at almost no cost at all. Um, a parishioner in our church created an LLC, a limited liability corporation, which is going to fund the project. And the reason that you need to have an LLC, a business, is because many of the benefits are tax incentives. The government has a tax incentive of around 30% tax rebate. There's also something called a rebate on passive income, because the LLC can take 100% depreciation in the first year if they own it for 5 years. So there's another 20% tax benefit. ComEd here in our area has a rebate that could be another 30,000. And then the state has renewable energy certificates that could add up to, in our case, our church, about $60,000 over 5 years. So after a period of 5 to 6 years, the LLC can get most of its money back and then transfer ownership to the church. If you don't want to do that, you can also go the easy way, and that's community solar, which is something that I use in my own home. What is community solar? It's basically a company has a solar farm out in the open area of Illinois, and it could have 5, 6, 7,000 panels, solar panels, and the company determines how many panels of energy production your house would need. In my case, it's 4.5 solar panels, takes care of all my energy needs for a year. And so I pay this company that generates the solar energy, and ComEd credits me because I don't use any of their energy, and it's 20% cheaper. So that's another option. Something else you can do is, excuse me, excuse me, subscribe to UCapture. Uh, this is a link to a video that talks about it, but basically, what is UCapture? It's an online company that has a relationship with 25 to 30,000 other online companies that sell services and products online. So if your parish subscribes to UCapture, basically it's ucapture.com/ with your church name, and parishioners connect to your account, and every time they make a purchase online, a small percentage of that goes back to UCapture as a commission. Doesn't cost you another penny at all. And it's very passive. All you do is online buying the way you normally do, but a commission of anywhere from 1% to 20% goes to UCapture. And what does UCapture do with that money? Well, 67% of that money is invested in projects worldwide on reducing carbon emissions. 18% goes to UCapture to run the business, and 15% comes back to your parish. So here's a way that you can help reduce carbon emissions at no cost, and basically it's very passive. Something else that you might do is less watering of lawns. I haven't watered my lawns, my house, for over 15 years, and they're as green as anybody else's. And if you want to find a good reason not to water besides saving the water, listen, click on this link and read a conversation between God and St. Francis about lawns. If you can't get this link, just go online and Google God and St. Francis discuss lawns. And the other thing that needs to be done is to implement the Laudato Si action platform. And that consists of what? Response to the cry of the earth, response to the cry of the poor, ecological economics, adoption of sustainable lifestyles, ecological education, ecological spirituality, community resilience, and empowerment. So, but why are we not doing enough? Well, people that don't want to do anything, I put them in one of four categories. They're non-believers. They don't believe in climate change. So why should I do anything? Although there are others that believe in it, but they say the market forces will solve the problem. Companies will solve the problem. I don't need to do anything. They'll do it. And then there's those people who say, I believe the climate change is a problem. I can do something about it. I have to change my lifestyle. I have to maybe spend a little more money. And if I do this, what impact am I going to have on the environment? So why bother? And then there's the worst ones. When the environment really deteriorates, I'm not going to be here anyway, so what do I care? So that's why we're not doing enough. So let me give you some final thoughts. We did not inherit the environment from our ancestors. We are borrowing it from our children. So even if we're not going to be here, we should do whatever we can for our children and our grandchildren and future generations. Bill McKibben, one of the top environmentalists in the world, says this generation will be the first to leave this world in worse shape than they found it. And something else that you might want to read, uh, I read it just a month ago or so in Time magazine from Antonio Guterres, who is the head of the United Nations, Secretary General of the United Nations. And he wrote a letter to his granddaughter's granddaughter, basically a letter dated 2059. And what it is, it's an apology for not doing enough to provide for a better planet for his granddaughter's granddaughter. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and feel free to contact me. There's my email address, my mobile phone, and I hope you'd enjoy this. And please feel free to contact me if you want a copy of the slides, or if you have any questions.